Okay, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody made it home safe and sound from Dallas, those that were from out of town. Um, I did. 6 hour drive, got home about supper time last night. Worked up a lecture here today. Our theme this week is trends, and I want to be extra sure that everybody is thinking about trends and what a trend is. A change in patterns over time. Um, so everything that we will be discussing tonight, we will be discussing in terms of its trend, um, or its change over time. And for the discussion question, um, you'll be picking a research article off of Google Scholar or the library website, and you'll be finding an original research article that found a trend in something related to what we're talking about tonight, which is everything in IT. So basically anything in IT. But I want you to find the article so that we have a large collection of of research articles that show trending, because that's an interesting approach to a research project. Not every research project does that. Some things are snapshots, of in time. But then some things do go back and look at trends and present existing data sort of in a new light. Um, so let's get started. I don't think this is going to be a lengthy lecture. Um, So I wanted to go over trends in overall network access, internet access, software, hardware, data, people, and then just for fun, the next big thing, which is sort of, I guess, if you really were a master of these trends, you might be able to see occasionally, a next big thing pops up. We're due, I think, for a next big thing. It seems like to me the last next big thing, the last big thing, the last next big thing was to me the iPhone. And I guess arguably you could say cloud computing was a big thing, but I don't really see cloud computing as that seemed more evolutionary than revolutionary to me, and continues to be that way. Just a natural evolution of the way the internet works. But anyway, we'll get going. Um, I put a bunch of links into this slide. The speaker notes, I didn't go into as much detail because most of what I'm putting there is practitioner, and you all can Google. You can Google the practitioner stuff for any of these topics to get up to speed, and then hit Google Scholar and find the research articles. Um, so internet access, I think we talked about this maybe in the very first lecture of the series, or of the class in this uh, semester. 16 million folks worldwide in 95 when the World Wide Web pretty much exploded to 4.5 billion today. And I linked my source in the speaker notes. I think that's fair to say that it's explosive growth. But I wanted you all to think about that trend, and if you decide to do your discussion topic on that, um, is it the global village or is it the digital divide? The haves and the have-nots. We talked a little bit about internet access. What was it? Team 3 or 4 over there on that side of the room had internet access, um, in developing markets. It's a big deal having it, um, and it's a big deal to not have it. So you could discuss those trends. I provided a link to the submarine fiber optic cable. There are other maps that show the terrestrial fiber projects being laid all over the planet. Fiber is the backbone. It's going to be a long time before anything supplants fiber optic cable as the major workhorse of moving data around the planet. But when you get to the end, as I say in this next bullet, you're starting to see lots of different technologies popping up for subscriber access. Well, you guys, when y'all were young, when y'all were young, you probably remember dial-up internet and modems going, beep, squeak, squonk, squonk, and then waiting and waiting and waiting for your web pages to download. That was, that was a big deal back then, in the mid '90s to the early 2000s. And that was the way pretty much everybody subscribed. And then very soon after that, you started getting, you had DSL, digital subscriber line, which is a way to use the twisted pair copper, um, twisted pair copper line, telephone line to your house to use it for data, and it maxed out somewhere around a megabyte. And then you had fiber coming right behind it, fiber to the household, fiber to the curb, they called it. Um, and then bam, 4G came out right after that. So now we're seeing 5G. We're seeing uh, potentially, um, Facebook drones and Google weather balloons and any of these other. There's Iridium satellite phones. Still kind of expensive. I don't think satellite access is ever really going to be the heavy lifter, um, because of the expense of getting a satellite into space. But that could change. They're working on nano satellites that are about the size of a carton of cigarettes or a loaf of bread, and they a cloud of them floating over the earth could work the subscriber. And I think terrestrial fiber links are still going to be like I said, the workhorse, the for carrying maximum data from point to point. Those nano satellites and weather balloons and solar powered drones are never going to be the tier one routers that are moving gigabits of data, and managing that traffic. They're going to be a subscriber, and they'll have to have a downlink that gets back down to the backbone. That's what I think. But check it out when you if you use this topic. I'm interested to see what you guys come up with as far as the trends in new technologies for subscriber access. And there are also changes in subscriber device choices. Pretty sure I put a link to that. It for the longest time, first 20 years of the internet's existence, it was you accessed it from mainframe computers that were interlinked on DARPANET, the predecessor of the internet, or the first name for the internet. And then you had PCs, and then we moved into mobile phones, and now you've got gaming consoles, and pretty soon you'll have computers that are like built into cars and kiosks, and pretty much anywhere you go, the internet will pop up in front of you, whether it's Google Glass, basically virtual devices, so that everywhere you go, no matter what you do, your digital assistant will be with you. Your access to your data in the cloud will be there. The access to the services you've subscribed to will be with you everywhere you go. There's trends in personal area network, and of course we've talked about IoT, Internet of Things devices. So uh, anything you can find that reports on trends, that conducts research, talks about the methodology for gathering the data for the trend that they're analyzing, and then you'll that'll really help get you into methodologies and research design and all of those other things that you'll need to have a handle on as you approach your dissertation projects yourself. So that's internet access trends. That's one thing you could talk about. Trends in software. You could go back and look at trends in software licensing and the way users were managed and the way revenue was managed and releases, major releases like Windows 95, 97, 98, XP, Windows 7, those sorts of things. Versus subscription, we're seeing a huge move in enterprise software to software as a service. Um, and subscription based pricing. So you could find a research article um, that discusses that sort of the monetizing of software and how that trend is going. You could look at open source versus proprietary software and that trend as far as numbers of users or amount of money that's that the open source is funneling from proprietary. It seems like anymore. I can't remember the last time I really paid for software. I pay a subscription to Microsoft for Windows and Office 365, but I may kill that here before too awful long because I use Google Docs primarily at work, Google Apps, Sheets, Slides, and Docs, and Gmail at work and at home. I only use Microsoft. PowerPoint and Word are going to be the hard ones to let go of for me. There are trends in programming languages. You could look at, I don't know, the numbers of lines of code globally that were written in COBOL, and Fortran, and then C came along, and then Java and C++, and Python and R and these other languages. What are the trends in that? What are the coming trends in computer programming languages? Is it going to be more AI? Is it um, more libraries, open source development? I've been working with Python and the Pandas laboratory. It's amazing to me what you get done with so few lines of code if you've got powerful libraries that you can reuse, um, which kind of goes into the licensing, open, any of that. The trends in software reuse are going way up because it's so easy to share information and it's so easy to search for things that you're looking for, and we're all getting more interconnected on social platforms like GitHub. Um, so you could look into trends in any of those areas, and then the trends of software architecture. I wanted to, if you want to dive deep, if you are a software engineer and you want to dive more deeply into this, I'd love to read what you find about software architecture as far as the movement from what was basically standalone software, DOS or mainframe or Windows applications that were really just standalone on their host workstation or enterprise computer, mainframe mini computer. And then we moved to client server. So you had a thick client program that just pulled data across the internet. You had like maybe a Windows program in Visual C++ that pulled data from an Oracle server across the internet somewhere. And then everything went kind of browser based, but now the browser got heavier and heavier to the point where now everything is browser based. But if you're a web developer, you know that there's a lot more going on in the browser, the user experience than it used to be. And now it seems like we've gone back to client server, where the client is, a browser, and you can download functionality to the browser now because the network is fast enough to support it. And then of course the cloud, whether it's on premise, pure cloud, public cloud, private cloud, a hybrid approach. What are the trends in the way software is being architected. Um, yeah, so we can go that direction. Hardware. We don't talk about hardware anymore. I used to love working on my computer and uh, putting in a new video card and all that kind of thing. I can't remember the last time I cracked open a computer. You buy a tablet or a phone, you just kind of use it until it's useless and you throw it away. I just recently bought a um, a Dell Tower computer, an i7 core with 16 gigs of RAM and a 2 terabyte hard drive, refurbished for like $290. I paid $1,500 in 1991 for a what were they called, that a 386 SX 20 megahertz. I used to track CPU speeds, like like you track your favorite cricket team. I knew all the specs, and I knew when something new was coming out, like the Intel Pentium computer when they moved from the 486 to the Pentium. And lately, it just seems like it's kind of plateaued, and it's maybe gone to the number of cores, but nobody really seems to care anymore. The PC hobbyist is not the mainstream user that it was in years gone by. So there's a lot of trends in hardware you could look at. You could look at, of course, Moore's law of decreasing cost, increasing performance. You could look at trends at where and how hardware is being manufactured. Um, uh, you could look at disposability, upgradability, e-waste trends. How these things that we build that aren't maintainable and aren't expandable, they wind up often being refurbished, and sometimes it's kind of dumped on countries that need the work, and it isn't pretty. The waste, the toxic chemicals and things that go into these. So you could look at the trends in the life cycle of the manufacturing and then disposal of hardware. But again, remember all of this. We're looking at trends, not just the topic. You can provide an overview of the topic in your discussion post. Please do briefly, 3 4 sentences. But then I want you to talk about the trend and the analysis of the trend and how the trend was derived. Don't forget that. And then hardware trends in human machine interface. We've got, the screen size got smaller and then it got bigger back, from the phone down to the teeny tiny phone that you couldn't hardly see, and then back up to the smartphone, and then up to a phablet, like the Samsung Note, and I think iPhone has a version. So you could look at those sort of trends, things like like I said, Google Glass as an output device, voice recognition as an input device, virtual keyboards, uh, body recognition. Where are we going with hardware trends? On the last bullet is the human machine interface. If I left something out, feel free to send me an email and see if you think it's an appropriate article. I'll give it a look. But if it has anything to do with IT and it collected original research and measured a trend, you're going to be okay. Okay, so after hardware, data, trends in data. This has exploded with the cloud and cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. Moore's law again. More dense storage and cheaper. I cannot believe how inexpensive storage is. Compared to years gone by. And the amount of data that we are generating. And these figures are out there if you care to use this as your topic. Big data, they got to come up with another term because the word big ain't big enough to describe the amount of data that we're generating. For example, you can go on YouTube or the web and Google a Nova special, the series on PBS Nova. They did a segment called "The Rise of the Drones," and it talked about the flight control software, clouds of drones, cooperative constellations of drones, and one of them that I thought was particularly interesting was called Argus, and it was a researcher at DARPA that linked a whole bunch of inexpensive cell phone cameras together and mounted them on a sheet underneath a drone, and together those cheap cameras put together a huge image that can then be analyzed, and it generates 1,000,000 terabytes a day, I think. Uh, Pretty sure it was 1,000,000 terabytes a day of video data, plus all the derived data. Once that video data goes through some analytical software and every little object moving around the screen. Watch the special Rise of the Drones, Argus. It's unsettling if you don't trust your government, and it's fascinating if you're a big data analyst or an information technology professional uh, in that area of digital image recognition and data mining and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, you could discuss, trends in data costs, storage costs, trends in storage technologies, moving from magnetic platters to solid state storage, um, redundant mirror sites across the planet, data policy trends. We're going from wide open and unregulated to where, like we talked before, maybe data ownership and data privacy and data rights are becoming more private. But again, you're reporting on the trend in your research paper that you find on Google Scholar. I'm not expecting you to just talk about this off the top of your head. And then you can look at the sources of data. Where's the data coming from? Um, there was a time when, it seemed like we didn't have, storage was expensive, so it kind of came from your application maybe. And then we started getting this proliferation of devices that create data, cell phones, cell phone cameras, um, social media, uh, uh, credit card transactions, banking transactions, everything now we pay for. We don't use money anymore. We create a piece of data in the form of a transaction. You've got video cameras everywhere now, police body cameras and traffic cameras. You've got scientific sensors out there generating big data, because they're inexpensive and they can connect to the grid and report data in real time. So you've got more data than we can deal with. You've got content developers on YouTube posting more content than we can ever watch, ever in our lifetime, ever in anyone, in all of our lifetimes. So yeah, that's another, just a trend in YouTube data would be an interesting snippet. Although that's out there, it wouldn't be I don't think it'd be an academic study. Anyway, data is another thing, and again, academic papers that collected data and reported on a trend. That's what we're looking to talk about this week. Trends in people, and how IT affects us as people. You can look at research papers that look at the impact on society. Um, these are going to be um, varied. You could look at the access to social media, the growth of social media, the trends, um, to include its impact on society and government. I mean, we had the Arab Spring, we had interference, apparently, maybe, interference in the U.S. elections. Um, so there's societal impact. I guess that would include texting while driving, which none of us are going to do ever again because thanks to Group Six and their treatment of of texting while driving, we all know we're not supposed to do that. Um, so anyway, yeah, there's a lot of trends that a lot of ways IT impacts society that have caused trends to happen that can be analyzed or have been analyzed in the literature. And then on the individual level, you might look at uh, like how IT has affected individual people in maybe in healthcare and thing where IT is saving lives. Just today, I had some dental work done, and they used 3D imaging. I asked the technician how this wand they stuck in my mouth. I'm still slurring a little bit. I had a crown made, and they grind your tooth down to a stub and then put a fake tooth on top of that. That is uh, more that's tougher than your old tooth if they start to crack and split. That's what happened to me. Had a molar that was starting to get cracks in it. So they grind it down, take a 3D image, and then take a mold of that 3D image. But there are milling machines like a CAD program that takes 3D renderings and would make my crown using the 3D rendering that they did with this wand that they stuck in my mouth that that mapped out in 3D the inside of my mouth and all my teeth down to the smallest detail. I don't know if it was ultrasonic or laser. I'm assuming it was ultrasound. But anyway, the trends of IT supporting healthcare and having an impact on individuals are absolutely something that would be subject to your for your paper that you're going to go find. And we talked about IT a little bit on the IT workforce. We talked about offshoring. There's a lot of other trends that you could look at as far as the workforce, numbers of people in certain specialties, lots of different things that apply to the workforce. The aging workforce, they're calling it the silver tsunami, especially in the States because of our birth rate. So luckily we have you guys to come in and help compensate for our lousy birth rate. You could look at trends in education and training, the amount of time that's spent, the amount of money that's being invested in education and training, trends in how that is happening. It used to be all higher education. I think that trend might be changing slightly to more online training. Oh yeah, yeah. IT training online versus in person. Lots of content out there being delivered online. You could look at the trends, the effectiveness, how many people are using that. Is anybody uh, uh, is anybody going to a real college anymore? Of course they are, but a lot of people are getting online degrees. Well, what's the trend in online higher education? Uh, I'm sure this is all out there in the literature. So, the next big thing, just for fun, if you find this in the literature and this is the topic that you want, uh, make sure you're using, an article that's in a peer-reviewed journal. But what are the futurists thinking the next big thing will be? And then, please, this is a discussion among professionals. What do you think the next big thing will be? Of course, it would be helpful to state your case. Um, I think the next big thing will be autonomous vehicles because the big thing is the economic and societal uh, change. Um, if I could, you know, climb into something like that looked like a minivan, and I could plug in a location that's, you know, 800, 1,000 miles away. And then I could just sit in a chair and I could read and I could watch a movie and I could take a nap. And then 1,000 miles later, I end up at my destination. Individual automobile travel is still sometimes cheaper depending on from where you're going and your, your origin and your destination. It's still cheaper than flying. I think it's going to change a lot. And we talked about the disruption of um, you guys looked at autonomous vehicles and safety concerns and whatnot, economic impact. I think the economic impact is going to be enormous when truck drivers get put out of work and Uber drivers get put out of work and taxi drivers get put out of work. We better figure out something. I don't know if it's universal basic income or something, but I think we're right around the corner from some pretty disruptive technologies, and autonomous vehicles are just the beginning. I'm ready for. It could be general purpose robot number one. Uh, if you check out the evolution of Honda's Asimo robot, that thing's getting to be where it's going to put everybody in a low skill job out of work. You won't have human beings doing anything like uh, you know agricultural work or menial construction work, low skill construction work, um, fishing, even to medium skilled. It's going to be drastic. But you could look at those trends and talk about the next big thing. But again, you're looking for a research paper that discusses trends. We want to talk. We want especially we want you to look at the methodology. So I think I'm going to hit that on the next slide. Yeah. Okay. Now I hope you all watch the video first. I'm going to put that online when I make um, this discussion post. Do not try this discussion post before listening to this video. But if you're listening to this right now, I don't have to tell you that because you're listening before you're typing, which you should always do every week. We're discussing trends, not just the topics. We want to look at the how the data was collected, how it was analyzed, and so I want you to think about this not from being just a person interested in technology, but as a researcher. So I want you to learn from the paper that you're sharing with us how the researcher gathered their data, what the design was, the design of the study, and the resulting trending findings. And if you want to go into the discussion of what's going on with the future, because a trend just tells you what has happened, and then it takes a little bit of magic to say where the trend's going to go in the future because you don't know. Um, Trends change, and sometimes they change overnight. Okay, so it's a discussion. Remember, guys, we're not going to just hey, that was a wonderful post. I'm going to add some points here. We're not doing that anymore. And in your initial post, your tone should be, you know, hello everyone. I found a great article on software trends, and I thought it was really interesting the way the scientists gathered his data. Da, 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 da. I want it in your own words, your own thoughts, plain language, and I want you to explain the article to us and why you thought it was interesting, what you thought was interesting about it. Tell us all about it. Teach us what's in the article. We can read the article. We don't need stuff from the article in your discussion post. Okay. So, absolutely no words from the article in your post. You tell us about the article. And then, if we think it's interesting, we'll talk about it and we'll go read it because you're going to attach it or send us a link, provide a link. Uh, Only choose an article that conducted, and I put this in bold, original research. So it collected data or at least analyzed existing data in some new, unique way. But it's not a literature review or just a background article or a textbook chapter. You know what I'm talking about, the kind of stuff that we had a hard time finding over the weekend. But make sure it identified a trend, and ideally, it's something that wanted to show a trend that had not yet been shown. That would be extra cool if you could find something like that. It may not be a super new article, but it would be good if you could show something within the last few years. Now, if you do find something interesting and it's from, say 5 years ago, and it showed trending data up until 2000, whatever, 13, 14. And then if the author made predictions that you can say whether or not they were accurate, that would be extra cool. That would be cool to look at. Kind of looking at trends and the analysis as to whether or not the trend will continue. It would be good to see your analysis of an article like that. But please share the article link, or if you can get the PDF, attach it to your post. But tell us all about it. What you thought about it. Don't just tell us about the topic. Um, Give us your thoughts on it. It would be extra good if you could link it to what you know and why you thought it was cool and why you were interested in it. We're not just doing this to fill a square and be done with the week's conversation. Do you choose something that you think is interesting? Okay, and let us know why, and we'll all talk about it. Okay. In conclusion, I really enjoyed our weekend together. Even those of you that came in late and let the door go, bam. So uh, that was a rewarding weekend for me professionally. I hope it was for you. Um, and as you find your article, I think you'll see, trends show previous data. You can't predict the future. Um, you can try, and many people do, and that's fine. But they're not a guarantee that they're going to continue. Um, but things go hand in hand. I'm curious to see what if people are linking trends in several different variables. That would be awesome to see. Um, and looking at where that trend is going in the future. So the prediction is fine to talk about. Um, we'll see. And remember, guys, these are conversations between peers. Keep it conversational. Don't lecture each other as if you're an expert in the field. Okay, I'm going to start posting something derogatory about those posts. I don't want to see that was a very great post. I wanted to make some more points. Nobody wants to see that anymore. Nobody cares. Doesn't add anything to the conversation. So just erase that from your technique, uh, and put a little more time into actual conversation with your colleagues and myself. And if somebody posts nonsense, which I hope we're over, I hope we're done. But if somebody posts nonsense, uh, call them on it. Call them out. Your colleagues, be professional about it. Be cordial. It's not a personal attack. It's a professional attack. If someone wastes your time and posts nonsense, they should hear about it. And just like if somebody posts or brings nonsense to a conference, they'll hear about it in person at the conference and online after the conference. So get used to it, guys. Get used to rigorous discussions. When you put your name on something, it needs to be quality, original information. And this is a great place to get started with that mindset. And as always, please feel free to email me with any questions or concerns. If you think you're going in the wrong direction with your trend analyzing article, feel free to email me. All right. Thanks and have a good week.